Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we will be diving into a mysterious tale that will challenge everything you think you know about the night sky and the balance that governs our world. This is a story about discovery, about the fragile connections between celestial bodies, and about what happens when the impossible becomes reality. You'll find yourself questioning the very foundations of astronomy and physics as we explore what it means when something as permanent as the moon simply vanishes without explanation. If you like the content and want to support the channel, be sure to subscribe. You wake up on what seems like an ordinary Tuesday morning. Sunlight streaming through your bedroom curtains in the familiar pattern you've grown accustomed to over the years. You stretch lazily, feeling the satisfying pop of joints that have been locked in sleep position for hours. Your alarm clock reads 7:15, which gives you just enough time for your usual morning routine before heading to work at the local observatory where you've been employed as a research assistant for the past 3 years. You shuffle to the kitchen, your bare feet coffee maker gurgles to life as you press the familiar buttons, and you lean against the counter waiting for that first precious cup of caffeine to brew. Through the kitchen window, you notice something that makes you pause mid-yawn. The neighbor's dog, usually so energetic and playful in the mornings, is lying on its side in the backyard, completely motionless. You squint through the glass, wondering if the animal is simply sleeping in an unusual position. You pour your coffee and step outside onto your back porch, the morning air crisp against your skin. The silence hits you immediately. No birds chirping, no distant hum of traffic, no neighbor starting their car for the morning commute. Even the wind seems to have died completely, leaving an eerie stillness that makes your skin crawl. You call out to the dog across the fence, but it doesn't respond. Not even a twitch of an ear. You walk closer to the fence line and realize with growing horror that the dog isn't sleeping. Its eyes are wide open, staring sightlessly at the sky. But its chest isn't moving. You feel a chill run down your spine that has nothing to do with the morning temperature. You look around frantically and notice that every tree in sight is completely still. Not a single leaf moving despite what should be a typical autumn breeze. You rush back inside and turn on the television, desperate for some explanation of what's happening. The news channels are broadcasting, but the anchors look confused and frightened. Reports are flooding in from around the world about animals found in the same condition as your neighbor's dog, and about a complete absence of wind patterns that has meteorologists baffled. You grab your phone and start scrolling through social media, finding thousands of posts with similar observations, and growing panic. You notice your hands are trembling as you scroll through increasingly alarming posts. People are reporting that birds have simply fallen from the sky, that ocean waves have stopped moving, and that the usual background hum of the planet seems to have gone silent. You feel a growing dread settling in your stomach as you realize that whatever is happening is global in scope and completely unprecedented. You decide to head to the observatory early, hoping that your colleagues might have some scientific explanation for these bizarre phenomena. You grab your keys and head to your car, but when you turn the key in the ignition, nothing happens. The engine doesn't even attempt to turn over. You try again, pumping the gas pedal, but the car remains completely dead. You pop the hood and stare at the engine, but everything looks normal. You try calling a mechanic, but your phone shows no signal despite showing full bars just moments ago. You start walking toward the observatory, which is about 3 miles from your house. The streets are eerily quiet, with cars scattered along the roadways. apparently all suffering from the same mysterious mechanical failure that affected your vehicle. You see other people emerging from their homes, looking just as confused and frightened as you feel. Some are trying their cars with the same lack of success you experienced, while others are gathered in small groups, talking in hushed, worried tones. You notice that your watch has stopped working, the hands frozen at exactly 7:42. You ask a passing jogger what time it is, but she points to her fitness tracker with a bewildered expression. Her device is showing the same time as your watch, frozen at that exact moment. You feel your heartbeat quickening as you realize that time itself seems to have been affected by whatever catastrophe has befallen the planet. As you continue walking, you encounter more people, and you begin to piece together a disturbing pattern. Everyone's electronic devices stopped working at exactly 7:42, regardless of time zone. Cars, phones, computers, even simple digital watches have all ceased functioning at that precise moment. You feel a cold sweat forming on your forehead as the implications of this begin to sink in. You reach the observatory after an exhausting walk that should have taken 40 minutes but felt like hours. Your colleagues are already there, having experienced the same phenomena you encountered. Dr. Martinez, the lead astronomer, is frantically trying to operate the main telescope manually, while Dr. Chen is attempting to get their backup generators running. You feel a mixture of relief and dread as you realize that the brightest scientific minds you know are just as confused and frightened as you are. Dr. Martinez looks up as you approach, her usually composed demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. She tells you that they've been trying to contact other observatories around the world, but all communication systems are down. The emergency radio equipment, which should work independently of standard networks, is producing nothing but static. You feel your stomach drop as you realize that humanity might be completely cut off from itself for the first time in over a century. You help Dr. Chen with the generator, and after several attempts, you manage to get it running. The observatory's basic systems come back online, and you feel a momentary surge of hope. Dr. Martinez immediately begins calibrating the telescope, muttering calculations under her breath as she works. You and Dr. Chen assist her, your hands moving with practiced efficiency despite the extraordinary circumstances. As the telescope comes into focus on the night sky region where the moon should be visible, Dr. Martinez suddenly goes completely silent. You see her grip the eyepiece so tightly that her knuckles turn white, and you feel a terrible certainty that whatever she's seeing will change everything you thought you knew about reality. You ask what she's observing, but she simply steps back from the telescope, her face completely pale. She gestures for you to look through the eyepiece, and you feel your heart pounding as you position your eye against the familiar viewing apparatus. What you see makes absolutely no sense to your scientifically trained mind. The moon is gone, not obscured by clouds, not in a different phase, not hidden behind some celestial object. The moon simply isn't there. You feel your legs go weak as you stare at the empty space where Earth's only natural satellite should be orbiting. You adjust the telescope's position, frantically searching the surrounding sky, but you find nothing. The moon has vanished completely, as if it never existed at all. You step back from the telescope, feeling dizzy and disoriented. Dr. Martinez confirms what you've observed, and Dr. Chen takes his turn at the eyepiece, only to stumble backward with the same shocked expression you're sure was on your own face. You feel like the ground beneath your feet has become unstable, as if the very foundations of physics and astronomy have been shaken. Dr. Martinez begins calculating frantically on a whiteboard, trying to determine what the absence of the moon would mean for Earth's tidal systems, rotational stability, and gravitational balance. You watch her work, feeling a growing sense of dread as you realize that the moon's disappearance would explain all of the phenomena you've observed today. The stopped winds, the motionless animals, the mechanical failures. Everything could be connected to this impossible astronomical event. You feel compelled to look through the telescope again, hoping against hope that the moon will have returned, that this will all turn out to be some kind of hallucination or equipment malfunction. But the empty space remains, mocking your desperate need for the familiar celestial companion that has watched over humanity since the dawn of time. Dr. Chen suggests that you try to observe other celestial bodies to determine if the moon's disappearance is part of a larger pattern. You help adjust the telescope to focus on Mars, which should be visible at this time of year. You feel a mixture of relief and continued terror when Mars appears exactly where it should be, its familiar red surface reassuring in its predictability. You spend the next several hours methodically cataloging other visible celestial objects. Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, and numerous stars all appear to be exactly where they should be according to your calculations. Only the moon is missing, creating a gap in the night sky that feels like a missing tooth in an otherwise perfect smile. As the day progresses, you notice that the sun's path across the sky seems subtly different from what you would expect. Without the moon's gravitational influence, Earth's axial tilt appears to be shifting slightly, which would have catastrophic implications for climate patterns and seasonal cycles. You feel overwhelmed by the magnitude of changes that could result from this single, impossible event. Dr. Martinez receives a brief radio transmission from a colleague in Japan, confirming that observatories around the world are reporting the same phenomenon. The moon has vanished from every perspective on Earth, ruling out any possibility that it's simply been moved to a different orbital position. You feel a chill as you realize that this is truly a global, perhaps universal crisis. You spend the evening trying to contact your family, but with all communication systems down, you have no way of knowing if they're safe or even alive. The silence from the outside world is deafening, and you feel increasingly isolated despite being surrounded by your colleagues at the observatory. As night falls, you stand outside the observatory building, looking up at the star-filled sky. The absence of the moon creates an unfamiliar darkness that feels wrong in a way you can't adequately describe. The stars seem brighter without the moon's reflected light competing with them, but their increased visibility only emphasizes the gaping hole where the moon should be. You feel a profound sense of loss that surprises you with its intensity. The moon has been a constant presence throughout your life, marking the passage of time, influencing poetry and romance, guiding navigation for centuries. Its absence feels like losing a family member you never realized you loved until they were gone. Dr. Martinez joins you outside, and you discuss theories about what could have caused the moon to disappear. Could it have been destroyed by some cosmic event? Could it have been somehow displaced to another dimension or timeline? Could this be the result of human activity that went terribly wrong? Every possibility seems equally impossible and terrifying. You notice that without the moon's gravitational pull, the ocean tides have become completely still. News reports from coastal areas describe unprecedented calm seas that look almost glass-like in their complete motionlessness. You realize that this change will have devastating effects on marine ecosystems and coastal communities that depend on tidal movements. The temperature begins dropping rapidly as night deepens, and you realize that without the moon's influence on Earth's rotational stability, the planet's ability to maintain consistent temperatures might be compromised. You feel a growing urgency to understand what has happened and whether it can be reversed before the changes become irreversible. You return to the observatory and spend the night taking detailed measurements and photographs of the empty space where the moon should be. Every calculation confirms the impossible reality that Earth's natural satellite has simply vanished without any detectable trace of where it might have gone. As dawn approaches, you feel exhausted, but unable to sleep. The implications of the moon's disappearance continue to multiply in your mind. Weather patterns, animal migration routes, plant growth cycles, ocean currents. All of these systems evolved over millions of years, with the moon as a constant factor. You can't imagine how Earth's ecosystems will adapt to its sudden absence. You check on the mechanical equipment throughout the observatory, noting that anything that was operating at 7:42 yesterday morning has remained frozen at that exact moment. It's as if time itself paused for everything, except biological processes. You feel like you're living in a science fiction nightmare that makes no scientific sense. Dr. Chen discovers that he can manually wind an old mechanical clock that was in storage, and it begins keeping time normally from that point forward. This suggests that the temporal disruption only affected electronic and electromagnetic systems, which provides a small clue about the nature of whatever caused the moon's disappearance. You will help Dr. Martinez compile a comprehensive report of all observations and measurements, hoping that when communication systems are eventually restored, this data might help other scientists around the world understand what has happened. You feel like you're documenting the end of the world as humanity has always known it. The second day brings no improvement in the situation. Animals remain motionless, electronics stay frozen, and the moon continues its impossible absence from the sky. You feel a growing despair as you realize that whatever force was powerful enough to remove the moon from existence might be beyond human understanding or ability to counter. You discover that manual vehicles and equipment still function normally, which gives you some hope for maintaining basic survival needs. However, the complex technological infrastructure that modern civilization depends upon remains completely non-functional. You feel like humanity has been thrust back into a pre-electronic age overnight. Food supplies at the observatory are limited, and you begin to worry about long-term survival if the situation doesn't improve soon. Without functioning transportation and communication systems, society support networks have completely collapsed. You feel increasingly grateful for your scientific training, which at least gives you some framework for understanding and potentially surviving this crisis. You notice that plant life seems to be responding to the moon's absence in subtle ways. Flowers that typically open and close according to lunar cycles remain in confused states of partial blooming. Trees that rely on moonlight for certain biological processes appear stressed and disoriented. You feel a deep sadness as you observe nature struggling to adapt to this unprecedented change. The night sky has an alien quality that makes you feel like you're living on a different planet entirely. Constellations that were previously partially obscured by moonlight now stand out with startling clarity. But their unfamiliar prominence only emphasizes how drastically your world has changed. You continue your observations and calculations, documenting every aspect of the moon's absence and its effects on Earth's systems. Each new discovery adds to your understanding of just how dependent life on Earth has been on lunar influence throughout its evolutionary history. You feel overwhelmed by the complexity of interactions that you're only now beginning to appreciate. Dr. Martinez theorizes that the moon's disappearance might be connected to recent advances quantum physics research, particularly experiments involving large-scale quantum tunneling and dimensional manipulation. While this seems far-fetched, you find yourself grasping for any explanation that makes sense within the framework of known scientific principles. You spend hours reviewing recent scientific literature, looking for any research that might have inadvertently caused such a catastrophic event. The possibility that human scientific advancement might have triggered this disaster fills you with a mixture of guilt and desperate hope that it might therefore be reversible. As the third day dawns, you notice that the sunrise appears different without the moon's gravitational influence on Earth's rotation. The sun's position is slightly off from where you would expect it to be, confirming your calculations about Earth's changing axial stability. You feel a growing urgency as you realize that these changes will compound over time. You attempt to establish contact with other observatories using various improvised communication methods, but your efforts are unsuccessful. The isolation is becoming psychologically difficult to bear, and you find yourself wondering if you and your colleagues might be among the few remaining people capable of understanding what has happened. The absence of animal sounds continues to be profoundly disturbing. Birds, insects, mammals, all seem to have been affected by the same temporal freezing that stopped electronic equipment. You feel like you're living in a world that has been partially frozen in time, with only human consciousness continuing to move forward. You discover that some older, purely mechanical systems continue to function normally, which gives you hope for maintaining basic observatory operations. However, the sophisticated computer systems that modern astronomy depends upon remain completely non-functional. You feel like you're being forced to rediscover astronomical science using 19th century methods. The psychological impact of the moon's absence becomes increasingly apparent as you spend more time outside at night. The familiar comfort of moonlight, which humans have relied upon for navigation and emotional connection throughout history, has been replaced by an alien darkness that makes you feel profoundly displaced and alone. You begin to wonder about the moon's fate. Was it destroyed, displaced to another dimension, or somehow hidden from Earth's perspective? Each possibility raises different questions about the forces involved and the likelihood of restoration. You feel frustrated by your inability to determine which scenario might be correct. Dr. Chen suggests that you attempt to detect any residual gravitational effects where the moon should be orbiting. Using sensitive mechanical instruments, you spend an entire day taking measurements, but you find no evidence that the moon still exists in an invisible or altered state. You feel your hope diminishing as each test confirms the moon's complete absence. The fourth night brings a meteor shower that would normally be partially obscured by moonlight. Without the moon's interference, the meteor display is spectacular, but you find it impossible to enjoy the beauty when it serves as a reminder of the cosmic catastrophe you're experiencing. You feel guilty for noticing the aesthetic improvement while contemplating the disaster that caused it. You realize that professional astronomers around the world are probably making similar observations and reaching similar conclusions about the moon's disappearance. This gives you some comfort, knowing that you're not alone in trying to understand and document this unprecedented event. You feel connected to a global community of scientists working to comprehend the incomprehensible. The temperature variations become more extreme as Earth's rotation becomes increasingly unstable without lunar influence. Daytime temperatures soar higher than normal, while nighttime brings unprecedented cold. You feel concerned about how these changes will affect global climate patterns and agricultural systems. You notice that ocean levels appear to be changing without tidal influence, though it's difficult to make precise measurements from your inland location. Reports from the brief radio transmissions suggest that coastal areas are experiencing either severe flooding or dramatic water recession, depending on where they were in the tidal cycle when the moon disappeared. The absence of normal electromagnetic activity continues to baffle you. The fact that the moon's disappearance somehow affected electronic systems suggests a connection between gravitational, temporal, and electromagnetic forces that current scientific understanding can't explain. You feel like you're glimpsing the edges of physical laws that haven't been discovered yet. You spend considerable time trying to develop theories that could account for all of the observed phenomena. The combination of temporal freezing, gravitational absence, and electromagnetic disruption points towards some kind of fundamental alteration in the fabric of space-time itself. You feel intellectually excited despite your fear, as if you're witnessing physics principles that could revolutionize scientific understanding. Dr. Martinez suggests attempting to calculate backward to determine the exact moment when the moon disappeared, hoping this might provide clues about the cause. Using mechanical chronometers and astronomical calculations, you work to pinpoint the event with greater precision. You feel like a detective investigating a cosmic crime scene. Your calculations suggest occurred at exactly 7:42 a.m. Coordinated universal time, regardless of local time zones. This precision suggests a deliberate or controlled event rather than a natural cosmic accident. You feel both relieved and terrified by this implication. Relieved that it might be reversible. Terrified about who or what might have the power to accomplish such a feat. The fifth day brings subtle changes in weather patterns that confirm your predictions about atmospheric effects. Wind currents that depend on the moon's gravitational influence begin to shift, creating unusual pressure systems and temperature gradients. You feel like you're watching Earth's climate system slowly unraveling without its lunar anchor. You attempt to create detailed maps of all the changes you've observed, hoping to identify patterns that might suggest solutions, or at least explanations. The interconnectedness of lunar influence becomes more apparent with each passing day, making you appreciate the delicate balance that has maintained Earth's habitability for billions of years. The psychological strain of the situation is becoming increasingly difficult to manage. You find yourself oscillating between scientific fascination at observing such unprecedented phenomena and existential dread about the implications for humanity's survival. You feel like you're documenting the slow motion collapse of the world as you've always known it. You notice that certain animals, particularly those that rely heavily on lunar cycles for navigation and behavior, seem to be recovering somewhat from their initial temporal freezing. This gives you hope that biological systems might be more adaptable to the moon's absence than electronic systems have proven to be. The absence of normal tidal activity begins to have visible effects on aquatic ecosystems. Coastal wetlands that depend on regular tidal flushing start showing signs of stagnation, while marine creatures that time their life cycles according to tidal patterns appear confused and disoriented. You realize that the moon's disappearance represents more than just an astronomical anomaly. It's a complete disruption of the evolutionary context in which all Earth life has developed. Every living system has adapted to lunar influence over millions of years, and that adaptation is now suddenly irrelevant. You feel overwhelmed by the magnitude of biological adjustment that will be required. The sixth night provides another opportunity to observe the altered night sky. Constellations that were previously difficult to see due to moonlight are now clearly visible, creating an unfamiliarly crowded stellar display. While beautiful, this change serves as a constant reminder of the missing lunar presence that should be dominating the night sky. You continue your systematic observations, documenting every measurable change in Earth's physical systems. Your data collection has become almost compulsive, as if maintaining scientific rigor can somehow protect you from the chaos unfolding around you. You feel like documentation and measurement are the only tools you have for maintaining sanity in an impossible situation. Dr. Chen proposes that you attempt to develop new theories of gravitational interaction that might explain how the moon could be removed without affecting other celestial bodies. This theoretical work provides a welcome intellectual challenge that distracts from the immediate crisis. Though you know that understanding the mechanism won't necessarily help you reverse it, you spend hours working through complex mathematical equations, trying to model scenarios in which selective gravitational effects could target specific objects. The math points toward manipulation of space-time geometry at a level far beyond current human technological capability. You feel both awed and terrified by the implications of such advanced physics being deployed against Earth. The seventh day brings news of social breakdown in many parts of the world as communication systems remain non-functional. And the reality of the situation becomes undeniable. Without modern infrastructure, human civilization is struggling to maintain basic organization and resource distribution. You feel grateful for your isolated location and small group of rational colleagues. You observe that plant photosynthesis patterns are beginning to change as Earth's altered rotation affects the duration and intensity of daylight exposure. Agricultural systems that depend on precise seasonal timing will likely fail, creating food shortages that could threaten human survival even if the direct effects of the moon's absence don't prove fatal. The temperature extremes continue to worsen as Earth's rotational instability increases. You calculate that, without intervention, the planet's climate would become increasingly chaotic, potentially making large areas uninhabitable within months. You feel a growing desperation to find some solution before these changes become irreversible. You notice subtle changes in the behavior of mechanical systems as Earth's gravitational field adjusts to the moon's absence. Pendulum clocks begin running at slightly different rates, and water flow patterns in plumbing systems shift in barely perceptible ways. These changes suggest that even Earth's internal gravitational dynamics are being affected. The absence of lunar influence on human biological rhythms becomes apparent as you and your colleagues struggle with disrupted sleep patterns and altered energy levels. Circadian rhythms that evolved over millions of years to coordinate with lunar cycles are now completely out of sync with the available environmental cues. You spend considerable time attempting to calibrate instruments that might detect any trace of the moon's continued existence in altered form. Every test confirms the complete absence of lunar mass from Earth's gravitational system, ruling out theories that the moon might still exist in some invisible or phase-shifted state. The eighth night brings an aurora display at latitudes where such phenomena are normally impossible. The disruption of Earth's magnetic field interactions, possibly connected to the loss of lunar gravitational influence, creates spectacular light shows that would be beautiful under different circumstances. You feel conflicted about appreciating the visual spectacle while understanding its ominous implications. You begin to construct detailed models of how Earth's systems will continue to evolve without lunar stabilization. Your projections suggest that the planet will gradually develop more extreme seasonal variations, potentially making it uninhabitable for most current life forms within decades. You feel the weight of documenting what might be humanity's final chapter. Dr. Martinez discovers an old radio telescope that can be operated manually, and you spend days getting it functional. The hope of detecting some signal or phenomenon that might explain the moon's disappearance drives you to work with desperate intensity. You feel like this might be your last chance to find answers before the situation becomes completely irreversible. When you finally get the radio telescope operational, you begin scanning the frequency spectrum for any unusual signals that might be connected to the moon's disappearance. The work is tedious and requires constant manual adjustment, but you feel compelled to examine every possibility for understanding what has happened. You detect several unusual electromagnetic signatures that don't correspond to any known natural phenomena. These signals seem to be coming from the precise location where the moon should be orbiting, suggesting that something is still there despite being invisible to optical and gravitational detection methods. The signals appear to be artificial in nature, with complex patterns that suggest intelligent construction rather than natural electromagnetic activity. You feel your heart rate increasing as you realize that these signals might represent communication or control systems related to whatever force removed the moon from normal space-time. You spend entire nights analyzing the signal patterns, trying to decode their meaning or identify their source. The mathematical complexity of the transmissions suggests technology far beyond current human capability, which both terrifies you and fills you with desperate hope that such advanced beings might be able to reverse what they've done. Dr. Chen suggests that you attempt to respond to the signals using the radio telescope's transmission capability. The idea of making contact with the force responsible for the moon's disappearance is simultaneously terrifying and irresistible. You feel like you're standing at the threshold between humanity's known universe and something infinitely more complex and powerful. You spend days crafting a response that combines mathematical constants, scientific principles, and desperate pleas for information about the moon's fate. The transmission process requires careful calibration to match the frequency and modulation patterns of the mysterious signals you've been receiving. When you finally transmit your response, the effect is immediate and shocking. The electromagnetic signatures you've been monitoring suddenly shift to new patterns, clearly responding to your communication attempt. You feel a mixture of elation and terror as you realize that you've successfully established contact with whatever intelligence is responsible for the crisis. The response signals become increasingly complex, incorporating mathematical concepts that challenge your understanding of physics and astronomy. You spend hours trying to decode each transmission, feeling like you're attempting to learn an entirely new form of mathematics in real time. Gradually, you begin to recognize patterns in the communications that suggest the transmitting intelligence is trying to convey information about the moon's location and condition. The signals seem to indicate that the moon still exists, but has been displaced to a different dimensional framework that makes it inaccessible from normal space-time. You feel overwhelmed by the implications of interdimensional displacement technology and the intelligence level required to develop such capabilities. The realization that Earth has attracted the attention of beings with godlike technological abilities fills you with awe and existential dread. Communications continue over several days, gradually becoming more sophisticated as both sides adapt to each other's mathematical and conceptual frameworks. You feel like you're participating in the most important scientific exchange in human history, even though you can barely comprehend the concepts being discussed. Eventually, the signals begin to convey what appears to be an ultimatum or conditional offer. The mathematical patterns suggest that the moon's return is possible, but depends on humanity meeting certain criteria or passing some kind of test. You feel the weight of potentially holding humanity's fate in your hands. The specific conditions remain unclear despite your best efforts to decode them. But the general message seems to be that humanity must demonstrate some form of worthiness or understanding before the moon will be returned to normal space-time. You feel frustrated by your inability to fully comprehend what is being asked of your species. As you continue trying to decode the alien communications, you realize that other observatories around the world might be having similar experiences. The thought that you're part of a global effort to communicate with this intelligence gives you some comfort, though you still feel the crushing responsibility of representing humanity in these exchanges. The signals suddenly stop completely, leaving you staring at silent instruments and wondering if you've somehow failed in your communication attempts. The absence of the electromagnetic contact feels almost as devastating as the original loss of the moon itself. You feel abandoned by the only source of hope you've discovered since this crisis began. You spend days trying to re-establish contact, transmitting variations of your previous messages and attempting new mathematical approaches to demonstrate human intelligence and worthiness. Each attempt meets with silence, and you begin to wonder if humanity has been judged and found wanting. The effects of the moon's continued absence become more severe with each passing day. Weather patterns destabilize further. Ocean currents shift dramatically, and reports from around the world describe ecological collapse accelerating at an alarming rate. You feel like you're watching Earth slowly die while being powerless to prevent it. Your own psychological state deteriorates as the isolation and responsibility take their toll. You find yourself alternating between manic dedication to solving the crisis and periods of despair, when the magnitude of the situation overwhelms your ability to cope. You feel like you're losing your grip on sanity while trying to save the world. Dr. Martinez and Dr. Chen continue their own research, but you can see the strain affecting them as well. The observatory has become a small island of scientific rationality in a world that no longer makes sense according to any known physical laws. You feel grateful for their companionship, even as you recognize that you're all slowly breaking under the pressure. The mysterious signals suddenly resume, but with different characteristics that suggest the intelligence is now communicating with multiple Earth locations simultaneously. You feel both relieved to re-establish contact and anxious about what this expanded communication might mean for humanity's test or judgment. The new communications seem more urgent and complex, incorporating concepts that stretch your mathematical understanding to its limits. You work frantically to decode the messages, feeling like you're racing against time to understand what humanity needs to do to save itself. Gradually, you begin to piece together what appears to be a set of instructions or requirements that humanity must fulfill to earn the moon's return. The specifications seem to involve demonstrations of scientific understanding, global cooperation, and some form of philosophical or ethical development that you struggle to interpret. You realize that the test isn't just about scientific knowledge, but about humanity's readiness to exist in a universe populated by intelligences with godlike technological capabilities. The moon's removal might have been both a crisis and an opportunity for your species to prove its worthiness to join a larger cosmic community. The weight of this realization is almost unbearable. You feel like every human being on Earth is depending on your ability to communicate with this alien intelligence and successfully navigate whatever challenge has been set before your species. The responsibility is far greater than any individual should have to bear. As you continue working to decode and respond to the alien communications, you become aware that time is running out. Earth's systems are approaching critical failure points that might become irreversible, even if the moon is returned. You feel the crushing urgency of solving an impossible puzzle while the world dies around you. The signals begin to incorporate real-time data about Earth's changing condition, suggesting that the alien intelligence is monitoring the planet's deterioration and possibly using it as motivation for humanity to meet their requirements more quickly. You feel manipulated and desperate, but you also recognize that this pressure might be necessary to force human cooperation and development. You work through the night, pushing your exhausted mind to its limits as you try to formulate responses that will satisfy whatever criteria the aliens have established. Each attempt feels inadequate, and you begin to wonder if any individual human intelligence is capable of meeting the challenge that has been set before your entire species. The communications suddenly include what appears to be a countdown or deadline indicator. You feel your heart racing as you realize that humanity's time to prove itself is rapidly running out, and you still don't fully understand what demonstration of worthiness is required. You stare at the countdown display with growing panic, realizing that you have less than 72 hours to decipher what humanity needs to demonstrate before the alien intelligence makes their final judgment. The mathematical symbols pulsing on your improvised communication array seem to mock your limited understanding, and you feel the weight of every human life pressing down on your shoulders like a crushing physical force. You decide to attempt a more direct approach in your communications, abandoning complex mathematical proofs in favor of simple, honest expressions of human experience and values. You transmit basic concepts about love, cooperation, creativity, and the desire to understand the universe around you. The response comes swiftly, but in patterns so alien that you spend hours trying to decode even the most basic elements. Doctor Martinez joins you at the communication station, bringing coffee that tastes bitter in your mouth as you contemplate the impossible task ahead. She suggests that the alien intelligence might be testing not just individual human capability, but species-wide cooperation and unity. You feel a spark of hope as you realize that this crisis might actually be forcing humanity to work together in unprecedented ways. You begin transmitting requests for the aliens to communicate simultaneously with every observatory, research facility, and communication station still functioning around the world. The idea of coordinating a global response seems impossible given the collapsed infrastructure, but you feel desperate enough to try anything that might demonstrate human potential for cooperation. The alien response includes what appears to be technical specifications for building some kind of communication amplification device. You stare at the transmitted blueprints with a mixture of excitement and terror, realizing that they're asking humanity to construct technology far beyond current capabilities, using only the manual tools and mechanical systems that still function. You spend the next 18 hours working with Dr. Martinez and Dr. Chen to interpret the technical specifications and gather the materials needed for construction. The device requires precise electromagnetic coils, crystalline focusing elements, and power sources that must be calibrated to frequencies that human science has never explored. You feel like you're attempting to build a spacecraft using Stone Age tools. The construction process pushes all three of you to the limits of your engineering knowledge and physical endurance. You work through the night, following alien blueprints that seem to defy several fundamental principles of physics as you understand them. Each component requires multiple attempts and constant recalibration. And you feel your confidence wavering with each setback. As dawn breaks on what the countdown indicates is your final day, you finally succeed in assembling the communication device according to the alien specifications. The moment you activate it, electromagnetic energy fills the observatory with an almost visible presence that makes your skin tingle and your hair stand on end. You feel like you've opened a doorway to dimensions of reality that human senses weren't designed to perceive. The amplified communication system immediately connects you to voices and signals from around the world. You hear fragments of conversations from observatories, universities, and research stations on every continent, all struggling with the same challenge you've been facing. The realization that you're part of a global community of scientists working toward the same goal fills you with renewed determination. You discover that research teams in Japan have successfully decoded portions of the alien requirements related to demonstrating human understanding of ecological interconnectedness. Groups in Europe have apparently satisfied criteria related to mathematical reasoning and logical problem solving. You feel both encouraged by their progress and anxious about what specific demonstrations your location might be expected to provide. The global communication network reveals that the alien intelligence has been presenting different challenges to different regions, testing various aspects of human knowledge, wisdom, and cooperation. You realize that this isn't a test that any individual or even single nation could pass alone. It requires the combined efforts and diverse strengths of the entire human species. Your communication device receives a new set of requirements that seem specifically tailored to your observatory's capabilities and location. The aliens want you to demonstrate human understanding of temporal mechanics and the relationship between consciousness and the passage of time. You feel overwhelmed by the complexity of these concepts, but you also recognize that your recent experience with the temporal freezing phenomenon might have prepared you uniquely for this challenge. You begin working with Dr. Martinez to formulate responses that describe human perception of time, the relationship between memory and identity, and the ways in which consciousness creates cross-temporal changes. The philosophical depth required pushes you far beyond your scientific training, and you find yourself drawing on literature, art, and personal experience to construct meaningful responses. The alien intelligence responds to your temporal consciousness demonstrations with what appears to be approval, but immediately follows with an even more challenging requirement. They want humanity to demonstrate the ability to make decisions based on long-term consequences rather than short-term benefits, even when those decisions require significant sacrifice or risk. You realize that this requirement goes to the heart of many of humanity's greatest challenges. Environmental destruction, resource depletion, conflicts between nations and groups. The aliens seem to be asking your species to prove that it can think and act with the kind of long-term perspective necessary for membership in a cosmic community of advanced civilizations. Through the global communication network, you learn are being presented to every human group that has managed to establish. The scope of the test becomes clear. It's not just about scientific knowledge or technical capability, but about fundamental human character and the ability to transcend short-term thinking for the greater good. You feel the countdown ticking toward zero as reports come in from around the world describing humanity's attempts to meet the aliens' requirements. Some groups are succeeding in their specific challenges, while others are struggling or failing entirely. The uneven progress fills you with anxiety about whether the species as a whole will pass whatever threshold the aliens have established. With only 12 hours remaining on the countdown, you receive a final communication that seems to be addressed to every human group simultaneously. The message is complex but clear in its essential meaning. Humanity has until the countdown reaches zero to demonstrate a single unified decision that proves the species' readiness for cosmic citizenship. The specific nature of the required decision gradually becomes clear through continued communication. Humanity must choose to permanently abandon certain technologies and behaviors that the aliens consider incompatible with advanced civilization. Nuclear weapons, environmental destruction, resource exploitation without regard for sustainability, and conflicts based on territorial or ideological differences. You feel the impossibility of the situation crushing down on you as you realize that the aliens are asking humanity to transform itself completely within a matter of hours. The countdown shows 8 hours remaining. You hear desperation in the voices coming through the global communication network as people around the world grapple with the magnitude of what's being demanded. Dr. Chen suggests that the aliens might not be expecting humanity to actually accomplish these transformations immediately, but rather to make a genuine buy-in commitment to pursuing them with the same urgency that the crisis has generated. You feel a flicker of hope as you consider that intent and commitment might be more important than instant results. You begin working with researchers around the world to draft a unified human response that acknowledges the challenges presented, accepts responsibility for humanity's past failures, and commits to the fundamental changes necessary for cosmic citizenship. The process requires constant compromise and negotiation as different groups advocate for their perspectives and concerns. The global drafting process reveals both the best and worst aspects of human nature. You witness remarkable cooperation and selflessness as people work together toward common goals. But you also see stubborn nationalism, ideological inflexibility, and short-term thinking that threatens to sabotage the entire effort. With 4 hours remaining, you achieve something that has never happened in human history: a genuinely global consensus on a unified statement of intent and commitment. The document acknowledges humanity's failures, accepts responsibility for change, and outlines specific steps toward the kind of civilization the aliens seem to consider worthy of cosmic citizenship. The unified human response is transmitted simultaneously from every functioning communication station around the world. You feel a profound sense of unity with your entire species as you participate in what might be humanity's most important moment. The decision to evolve beyond its destructive past and embrace a future worthy of the stars. The alien intelligence responds immediately with communications that seem to express something analogous to satisfaction or approval. The mathematical patterns suggest that humanity has met the minimum requirements for the test. But the final outcome still depends on follow-through and genuine commitment to the promised changes. You watch the countdown approach 0 with a mixture of hope and terror, knowing that the next few minutes will determine whether Earth regains its moon or faces continued ecological collapse. The silence from your colleagues and from the global communication network suggests that everyone is holding their breath for the final judgment. As the countdown reaches 0, you feel a subtle shift in the electromagnetic fields around the observatory. The alien communication device begins humming with increasing intensity, and you sense massive amounts of energy building up in systems far beyond your comprehension. The moment of judgment has arrived, and you can only wait to learn humanity's fate. The sky outside begins to glow with an aurora display unlike anything in recorded history. Sheets of colored light dance across the heavens as massive electromagnetic forces manipulate Earth's upper atmosphere. You realize that you're witnessing the application of technology so advanced that it appears magical to your limited understanding. Through the global communication network, you hear gasps of amazement and relief as people around the world report seeing something impossible. The moon is returning, not gradually, but instantaneously, as if it's being moved back into normal space-time from whatever dimensional framework had been concealing it. You rush outside and look up to see Earth's familiar satellite hanging in its proper position in the sky, looking exactly as it should, but somehow more beautiful than you remember. The relief is so overwhelming that you collapse to your knees, finally allowing yourself to feel the full emotional impact of the crisis you've just survived. The return of the moon brings immediate changes to Earth's systems. Electronic devices that had been frozen at 7:42 suddenly resume operation, displaying the correct current time as if the intervening days had never happened. Cars start, phones reconnect to networks, and the familiar background home of technological civilization returns. Animals that had been motionless since the crisis began suddenly animate, continuing their activities as if awakening from a brief sleep. Birds resume singing, insects return to their buzzing, and the neighbor's dog that you had thought was dead bounds energetically around its yard. You feel overwhelmed by the restoration of normalcy, but you also recognize that humanity has been fundamentally changed by this experience. The global cooperation required to meet the alien test has created connections and commitments that didn't exist before the crisis. Through the restored communication networks, you learn that governments around the world are moving with unprecedented speed to implement the changes promised in humanity's unified response. Nuclear disarmament treaties are being signed, environmental protection measures are being enacted, and international cooperation agreements are being established at a pace that would have been impossible before the crisis. You realize that the alien test wasn't just about proving humanity's worthiness. It was about catalyzing the changes necessary for your species to survive and thrive in a universe populated by advanced civilizations. The crisis forced humanity to evolve in ways that might have taken centuries or millennia under normal circumstances. The alien communication device continues to receive signals, but they're now friendlier and more instructional in nature. The intelligence that tested humanity is now offering guidance and assistance in developing the technologies and social structures necessary for cosmic citizenship. You spend the following weeks working with researchers around the world to decode and implement the alien technological gifts, the advances in energy production, environmental restoration, and space travel. Capabilities promise to transform human civilization beyond recognition within a few generations. Dr. Martinez points out that the moon's temporary removal had another effect. It forced humanity to truly understand and appreciate the delicate balance of systems that make Earth habitable. This understanding will be crucial as your species begins expanding beyond the home planet and encountering the challenges of space colonization. You begin to see the crisis in a new light, not as a disaster that humanity barely survived, but as a graduation ceremony that marked your species' transition from planetary to cosmic citizenship. The fear and desperation you experienced were labor pains accompanying the birth of a new phase in human evolution. The psychological impact of the experience continues to affect you and everyone else who lived through it. The knowledge that humanity is not alone in the universe, that advanced civilizations are watching and evaluating younger species, has fundamentally changed how people think about their place in the cosmos. You find yourself looking at the moon each night with a mixture of gratitude and wonder, knowing that its familiar presence represents not just restored normalcy, but humanity's successful passage through the greatest test in your species' history. The lunar surface that once seemed cold and distant now appears as a symbol of hope and cosmic connection. The observatory where you work has been designated as one of the primary centers for ongoing communication with the alien intelligence. You feel honored to be part of the continuing dialogue that will guide humanity's development as it prepares for eventual direct contact with other cosmic civilizations. Your colleagues and you have become something like ambassadors between humanity and the cosmos, carrying the responsibility of maintaining the relationship established during the crisis. The work is challenging and sometimes overwhelming, but you recognize its crucial importance for your species' future. The changes promised during the crisis are being implemented faster than anyone thought possible. International conflicts are being resolved through cooperation rather than force. Environmental restoration projects are receiving unprecedented support and resources, and scientific research is being shared openly across all national and ideological boundaries. You realize that the alien test identified and activated the best aspects of human nature, while providing the external pressure necessary to overcome the worst aspects. The result is a species that's still recognizably human, but far more capable of wisdom, cooperation, and long-term thinking than before the crisis. The technological gifts from the alien intelligence are being carefully studied and implemented to ensure they're used for the benefit of all humanity, rather than becoming tools of division or domination. The experience of nearly losing everything has made people much more conscious of the need to consider consequences before adopting new capabilities. You spend considerable time documenting the entire experience for future generations, wanting to ensure that humanity never forgets the lessons learned during those crucial days when the moon disappeared. The records will serve as both historical documentation and cautionary guidance for future challenges. As months pass, you begin to receive communications suggesting that humanity's test was the first of several evaluations that younger species must pass as they develop cosmic citizenship. The knowledge that other tests await is sobering, but you feel confident that the experience with the moon's disappearance has prepared humanity for whatever challenges lie ahead. The global unity, forged during the crisis, proves to be remarkably durable, surviving the return to normal conditions and continuing to drive unprecedented cooperation on challenges that had seemed intractable for generations. You witness the resolution of conflicts, the healing of environmental damage, and the development of technologies that seemed impossible just months earlier. Your role in establishing first contact with cosmic civilization has made you something of a celebrity, but you find the attention less important than the continuing work of maintaining and developing the relationship with humanities. The real satisfaction comes from knowing that you played a part in helping your species take its first steps toward a larger universe. You often think about how different the world would be if the crisis had gone differently. If humanity had failed the test, or if the alien intelligence had decided your species wasn't ready for cosmic citizenship. The alternative timeline where Earth continued to deteriorate without the moon fills you with gratitude for the outcome you actually experienced. The restored moon serves as a constant reminder of both humanity's fragility and its potential. You know that the advanced civilization that tested your species could easily remove the moon again, or impose other challenges if humanity fails to live up to its commitments. This knowledge adds weight to every decision made by human leaders and institutions. The awareness of being observed and evaluated by cosmic intelligences has become a powerful force for maintaining the positive changes initiated during the crisis. You find yourself looking forward to the future with excitement rather than anxiety for the first time in your life. The knowledge that humanity has passed its first cosmic test and earned the right to begin developing relationships with advanced civilizations fills you with hope for possibilities that extend far beyond anything you could have imagined before the moon disappeared. The scientific advances made possible by alien guidance are revolutionizing fields from medicine to environmental restoration to space exploration. You feel privileged to be part of the generation that will witness humanity's transformation from a single planet species to a cosmic civilization. Your work at the observatory has evolved from studying distant celestial objects to facilitating communication with the intelligence that controls them. The shift represents not just a career change, but a fundamental transformation in humanity's relationship with the universe around it. You realize that the young research assistant who woke up to find the moon missing no longer exists. That person has been replaced by someone with cosmic perspective and responsibility. The change isn't just personal, but representative of the evolution that your entire species has undergone. As you stand outside the observatory on the anniversary of the moon's disappearance, looking up at Earth's restored satellite hanging peacefully in the star-filled sky, you feel profound gratitude for the crisis that nearly destroyed your world, but ultimately saved it. You understand now that humanity's greatest challenges often come disguised as disasters, and that the species' capacity for growth and transformation is far greater than anyone suspected. The moon's return represents not just the resolution of a crisis, but the beginning of a new chapter in human history. The alien intelligence continues to monitor humanity's progress, offering guidance when requested, but allowing your species to develop its cosmic citizenship through its own efforts and choices. You sense approval in their communications, suggesting that humanity is meeting expectations and perhaps even exceeding them in some areas. You know that other young civilizations throughout the galaxy are probably facing similar tests, struggling with the same challenges of proving their worthiness for cosmic citizenship. The thought makes you feel connected to a universe full of developing intelligence and potential. Your species has learned that the universe is not empty or hostile, but populated by advanced civilizations, willing to guide and support younger species that demonstrate wisdom, cooperation, and long-term thinking. This knowledge has fundamentally transformed human philosophy and spiritual understanding. As you prepare to return to the observatory for another night of cosmic communication, and scientific advancement, you reflect on the journey from discovering the moon's absence to participating in humanity's cosmic graduation. The experience has been terrifying, challenging, and ultimately transformational in ways you never could have anticipated. You feel confident that humanity will continue to meet the challenges and opportunities of cosmic citizenship, building on the foundation established during those crucial days when the moon disappeared and your species learned to think beyond the boundaries of a single planet. The restored moon shines down on a world that looks the same, but has been fundamentally changed. And you know that the real adventure is just beginning as humanity takes its first steps toward the stars and whatever wonders and challenges await among the cosmic community of advanced civilizations.